What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, bro. Once again, another phone comparison, and this is kind of interesting because we're comparing my daily phone, the phone that I use every single day, my main phone, if you will, to a phone that I hype up a lot. I say the iPhone 6s is one of the phones that, honestly, if you still have it, like, there's really no point in even upgrading. For a majority of you, I will say if you demand more from a phone, obviously go get the newest one or whatever. But for a majority of people out there, I feel like an iPhone 6s might just be a good phone for now, at least while it's still supported. I think it's definitely getting iOS 13. I'm pretty sure it's going to end there. But let's just go ahead and see how these two things still hold up in 2019. Now, they're both running the same exact software. I've already done a speed test on them, and I'll show that later on in this video, the app opening speeds and all that good stuff. And obviously, if you have all the money in the world, go get an iPhone 10. This is not me trying to persuade you to go pick up an iPhone 6s or anything. Like, obviously, the iPhone 10 is a much better phone, but how much better of a phone it is. And it's interesting because I did this same comparison last year when they both got iOS 12, and a lot of you guys loved that review and that comparison. And that ended up being one of my most viewed comparisons ever. And that really just goes to show how much of a demand there is for more of an iPhone 6s than an iPhone 10, in my opinion, and more so how the iPhone 6s still holds up. So the iPhone 6s actually came out in 2015 in September, so this year it'll turn 4 years old. With the iPhone 10, as you guys probably know, it came out in 2017, so the iPhone 6s as of right now is twice as old as the iPhone 10. And just looking around the body on both of them, obviously the iPhone 10 is a much better looking display. It has a notch on it, no home button, no nothing like that. I'm sure you guys already know. In terms of the size and how they feel in the hand, the iPhone 10 is just a little bit bigger. The iPhone 6s had a 4.7 inch screen. The iPhone 10 does have a 5.8 inch display, but there is way more bezel on the iPhone 6s, so it's not like the iPhone 10 is like way bigger. It's just like noticeably in the hand. You can probably easily tell that one is bigger than the other. In terms of the display though, the iPhone 6s had a 750p IPS panel, which wasn't that bad in my opinion. I don't think it's horrible, but it's definitely not as good as the iPhone 10's 1125 by 2438 OLED panel. And you know what, my guy, if I had to say it, the iPhone 10, even if the iPhone 6s in my opinion had an OLED panel, would obviously still not be as good as the iPhone 10's. The iPhone 10 display is very good. I'm pretty sure Samsung was the one who displayed this panel, who sourced it to Apple, and as we all know, Samsung does a really good job on their displays, and this was no exception. When I even use this phone, I don't feel like I'm using a horrible phone or an aged phone at all. I think this phone's display is very good, and even when I compared it to the Galaxy S10, which I've already done, I noticed that the display wasn't bad at all. I noticed it was still very sharp, but I'm sure you guys probably already know that. Now, one interesting thing between these two phones is that the iPhone 6s is not certified water resistant or anything like that. Now, some people have stated that there is a little bit of water resistance within it. I would never want to test that, but I guess that's there. The iPhone 10 does have IP67 dust and water resistance, so you can go up to 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. So in all, I definitely do think that the iPhone 10 is better in just ruggedness overall. Now, I'll tell you one thing right now, putting screen protectors on the iPhone 10 is so much harder than putting them on the iPhone 6s, in my opinion. When I owned the 6s Plus and the 7 Plus, putting the screen protectors on wasn't that bad. Every time I put one on the iPhone 10, I screw it up every time, and I'm so mad. But that sounds like a personal problem, and I gotta figure that out. Now, in terms of software, this is easily the biggest difference probably between these two. I would say probably even more than performance. And the main thing here is that the iPhone 6s started off with iOS 9. Right now it's on iOS 12.2. The iPhone 10 started off on iOS 11.1.1, and right now it's obviously upgradable to iOS 12.2 as well. The thing though is that because the iPhone 6s is older, it's obviously going to stop and support software supported that before the iPhone 10. So I keep hearing these rumors and suggestions that the iPhone 6s is going to last until like iOS 15 or something. I'm telling you guys right now, it might get iOS 14 maybe, but it's definitely not getting iOS 15 unless Apple does something crazy and starts supporting their devices for even longer. In my opinion, the iPhone 10 is going to far outlast the iPhone 6s, and I'm pretty sure the iPhone 10 is going to get an extra year of support even beyond the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, mostly because, and I know that sounds weird, but because the iPhone 10 started on iOS 11.1.1, it didn't start right on the dot at iOS 11, I could totally see Apple extending the support on the iPhone 10, also because it has that gesture-based design, so the software supports that come in the future will align with whatever the iPhone 10 does. So in my opinion, the iPhone 10 is going to far outlast the iPhone 6s as well as the iPhone 7 and maybe even the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, who knows. So that kind of covers the software aspect of it. Now let's go ahead and move on to the performance aspect of it. Now this is kind of interesting because, as you guys know, I always hype up the iPhone 6s, saying it's still a good performer and everything, and I don't want to take anything away from that. I still think the iPhone 6s is a very decent phone. It's it's a little bit above average in my opinion, but the iPhone 10 is a much better performer, but not as much as you would think. So the iPhone 6s had the Apple A9 chip, a dual-core CPU, and 2 gigs of RAM, the legendary 2 gigs upgrade, where the iPhone 10 had the Apple A11 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and 3 gigs of RAM. And based off the specs, you would probably think, okay, hexa-core versus dual-core, it's probably 3 times as fast, whatever. The iPhone 10 is faster, but it's not as faster as you would think, if that's even a good sentence. My speed comparison, as you can see, the iPhone 6s, isn't horribly slow, and I think that's one thing that you kind of have to keep in mind. Like, as phones get faster and faster and faster, you would expect them to be faster than the previous generation, and they are, but they're not as much faster as you would think. Like, as you can see, the iPhone 6s is not that completely slow. The iPhone 10 is pretty fast, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not as fast as you would think, or the iPhone 6s isn't as slow as you would think. And I think the biggest thing here is probably the value per dollar. Obviously the 10 is faster, but maybe you're getting a better value per dollar from an iPhone 6s in a performance standpoint. And you know what, if that's important to you, then you have your information and your data now to kind of drive that decision. But in my opinion, bro, the iPhone 10 is a very solid performer, but I still think the iPhone 6s still has a little bit of power within it. And it sounds like I'm like some iPhone 6s like propaganda person who's trying to like push this narrative of everyone getting iPhone 6s, but I'm telling you, this is just my opinion. If you have an iPhone 6s, I really don't think there's a big reason to push, and Apple's even seeing that because less and less people are upgrading their phones. So in my opinion, in terms of the performance on both of these, the iPhone 6s, in my opinion, is still a very decent performer, but obviously the iPhone 10 is faster in pretty much anything you're going to do with it. So kind of keep that in mind when you're kind of making your decision. Now in terms of the camera, this is where things kind of get interesting. Okay, so the iPhone 6s has a single sensor, 12 megapixel sensor, where the iPhone 10 has a dual camera setup where they're both 12 megapixel sensors. And in my opinion, if I'm being completely honest, obviously the iPhone 10 is better, but in terms of just taking the photo, I don't think there's like a night and day difference between these. I think the iPhone 6s's camera is still pretty decent. Obviously the iPhone 10's camera is better, but me, I'm not a photographer. I barely use the camera on my phone, and if I do, it's just on like Snapchat or sending somebody something. Like, it's not even that big of a deal. That is pretty much a big component when I'm determining a phone, is what I'm going to use within it. For the cameras, you don't really use them that much. So in my opinion, the iPhone 10's camera is better, but the iPhone 6s's camera isn't horrible. In fact, they both can shoot 4K videos. The iPhone 10 can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, so that's a pretty big deal right there, a big difference. And another humongous difference is that the iPhone 10 does have better software in the camera than the iPhone 6s, so you can do portrait mode, portrait lighting, or studio lighting, whatever that is called. You have a lot more functionality on the iPhone 10's camera than on the iPhone 6s's camera. So if you're into, taking portrait photos, and if you're into doing things like that, then obviously the iPhone 10 might be a better decision for you. But I don't necessarily think, like I said before, the iPhone 6s's camera is bad just in taking the raw photos. And I even did a comparison between the 6s and the iPhone 10R's camera. They're both single sensors, and I found that, the iPhone 10R's camera is better, no doubt, but the 6s's camera isn't horrible, man. And that's kind of what this thing kind of boils down to. Now I'm going to hit off the last thing, which is the battery life, and I'm kind of going to wrap this up in as best as I can. So the iPhone 6s had a 1700 mAh battery, where the iPhone 10 had a 27 mAh battery, and without a doubt, I would definitely say the iPhone 10's battery life is overall better than the iPhone 6s's battery life. I mean, it's not even just a battery size thing here. I mean, it definitely is. I mean, I always put a bigger battery size in your phones. Manufacturers, if you're a phone manufacturer listening to this video, please I'm praying to my God every day, put a bigger battery in your phones. There's no reason not to. Samsung delivered on that promise. LG kind of did too, I guess. Hopefully Apple can learn from this year. But I mean, like, the iPhone 6s kind of had trouble with its battery in Apple's past. If you guys don't remember, this was the main phone that people saw Apple throttling the speeds with. If you guys remember that one guy, I need to interview that guy. If anybody knows who that person is, give me his contact info. I want to interview him on this channel. I feel like it'd be really interesting how he found all that out and all that stuff. But pretty much once that news came out, that person was able to see that on their iPhone 6s, and that's what kind of sparked that whole thing. So in my opinion, Apple kind of has a love-hate relationship with the 6s in terms of that, and that's what made the $29 battery replacement happen. So the battery life was never really that good on the iPhone 6s. It wasn't horrible. If you got to replace, you were set. But you also have to remember the 6s is older, so the battery degradation has probably happened more on the 6s than on the iPhone 10. So that's a pretty big thing to keep in mind right there. The iPhone 10 has had less time to, I guess, degrade the battery over time with. So without a doubt, I would definitely say in terms of both of these, the iPhone 10 will definitely last you longer in terms of battery life and just an overall functionality as well. And I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when I'm doing this whole entire comparison. And for me to wrap this up, I mean, without a doubt, the iPhone 10 is a much better phone. I mean, you're getting some things with the iPhone 6s. You're getting a fingerprint sensor, Touch ID 2. You're keeping that headphone jack with some some of you guys love. And it's an overall smaller phone than the iPhone 10, but there's definitely a huge gap here because you kind of see the future and you kind of see the past, you know. And I'm not saying the iPhone 6S is a horrible phone, like I love it to death, but you kind of see where the differences lie. I mean, the iPhone 10 is kind of the future and the iPhone 6S is like, okay, like, you know, it was once upon a time. And it's kind of sad because a lot of people didn't think the iPhone 6S was a huge upgrade or anything. And I'm making it seem like people are trying to decide between these two phones, but it's definitely not. I mean, people are definitely going to pick the iPhone 10 if they had a choice. For me to boil this down to, I will definitely say the iPhone 10 is an amazing phone. I think it's awesome. I think it's whatever. It's my main phone that I use every day, so obviously I like it. But the iPhone 6S has a place in my heart forever. It's definitely one of the greatest phones ever made in my opinion. Right now they're super cheap. You can get them on Amazon for extremely low prices. The iPhone 10, I think you can get it on Amazon for like $600. The iPhone 6S for less than 200, around 250 to 200. So if you currently have an iPhone 6S, I will tell you just keep it for like another year. Wait until iOS 13 gets all fixed and stuff, and then just resell your iPhone 6S and then go pick up an iPhone 10. They'll be cheaper by then. So I will leave links to an iPhone 6S and an iPhone 10 in the description below. The cheapest ones I find, I'll link them straight on Amazon so you guys can get them from there. Every single sale that goes through those links, a little bit of that revenue comes back to the channel so we can do more videos like this, some more comparisons and more giveaways and all that good stuff. So it means so much if you guys can actually buy your things through those links. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.